is the right to tell what they do not want to hear. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Tired of the same repetitive government narratives? Then wave goodbye to the distractions and rhetoric of corporate media. For this is Anti-Media Radio.
But I want to get the language right. The government is in trouble.
You're all a bunch of slaves! Bunch of slaves!
What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
What's your definition of me?
And now, here's your host, S.M. Gibson.
Our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, and I think I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it. Quote by John Lennon, Tuesday, March the 24th, Anti-Media Radio. Welcome to another fantastic edition. We're not even going to get into the news tonight. We're kicking off the presidential elections. To me, that's like WrestleMania.
Yeah, and the first one in the ring.
The first one in the ring is Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz!
And here's the thing about Cruz. He is he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He is, because he says some really good stuff. He made a very, 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 I guess you want to say brave, but you can say politically astute stand against Obamacare. Obamacare needs to go. We all know that. And he made a great stand for it. But at the same time, a guy that admits he smoked weed, he's all about putting those people in jail. I don't smoke weed. But you know what? I don't think those people should be put in jail. I think it helps people.
And I don't think they need to be put in jail.
Right. But, I don't. But, so we've got that. We've got a guy that he's already willing to bomb people. All right, we had a little bit of technical difficulties there. So we're talking about Ted Cruz, and that kind of freaks me out the way that just cut in and out right there.
Yeah, it's
Maybe the system is for Ted Cruz.
I don't know. I've still got all my eggs as far as where my bet is going to go, as far as the way this is all going to swing out. If the GOP really does have it in this election cycle coming up, I'm still thinking our president, unfortunately, will carry the same last name as a couple presidents we had not too terribly long ago. It's going to be that kind of party, I'm afraid. And again, I could be wrong. I've only been wrong about at least one or two things in my whole life, but it's the last name Bush for a presidential election has been a pretty safe bet up until now.
Well, you're more than right about that, but let's talk about the guy that's put himself in the ring, Mr. Ted Cruz, cruising along. And, he gets up there and he speaks in front of Liberty in Virginia, which is, Jerry Falwell's, Christian school. And, I'm fine with
And he's also gone on record, in addition to just this speech, but he's definitely pushing very hard for the conservative Christian crowd too. There's a
I'm
lot of
okay
different
with
anecdotes.
that. I'm okay with that. The problem I have with that is how dare, again, and this is a really big problem that I have with really the church in general. But I tell you what, we have a special guest on right now that knows more about politics than I do tenfold.
Good, we're off the hook.
Yeah, we're off the hook on this. Great friend of mine, politically astute genius, Michael Lotfi. How you doing tonight?
I don't know about genius, but I'm good, thank you. How are you doing, Scott?
Doing good, man. So we're talking about Cruz here a little bit. Why don't you kind of throw your opinion in the ring and tell us what you think?
I have to be honest. I really like Ted Cruz. He's a good guy. I've followed him around the country. A few different events I've been to where he's been a keynote speaker. And one great thing about him is he certainly knows how to deliver the red meat. However, I would say that most of what he delivers is a lot of rhetoric. If you look at Ted Cruz's history in the Senate, at least as an actual policy maker, there's not much that he's done other than spit rhetoric. And it's not to say that the rhetoric isn't great or that he doesn't have some good ideas, but they're mostly just ideas. He has not substantially laid out any sort of major policy initiative, or he's never drafted a budget or anything else that you see some of the other guys who are considering their presidential run, like Senator Rand Paul, Senator Marco Rubio. Both of these guys have submitted national budgets from their Senate offices, and you don't see that same type of behavior from Ted Cruz. One other thing that I would note from the Cruz campaign is, there was no exploratory committee. There was no, or I should say, most of the talent has sort of left his campaign, and most of them have fled to Senator Paul's campaign for the presidential race, or I should say presumptive presidential race, since he's not yet officially announced.
Well, we're 2 weeks away, I guess, April the 7th or whatever day it is.
Yeah, about 2 weeks away. He's expected to announce. But I think what's interesting is that if you look at the Cruz campaign, other than a hashtag make DC listen, there's not any organization whatsoever. You haven't heard of any major, or at least it hasn't made the headlines, like it does on the Paul campaign, with regards to, these major, hires that are, taking major roles on the campaigns in the battleground states and et cetera. So it sort of makes me think that even the presidential race in and of itself is just another piece of rhetoric for Senator Cruz, and perhaps he doesn't actually intend to run the race to win the race, and it's more of a rhetorical stunt to sort of beef up his presence and image in the Senate.
Well, and you know this as well as I do, and I don't want to go kind of conspiracy here, but at the same time, there's a lot of money to be made when you run for president.
Yeah, there's definitely some money to be made there. It'll certainly help his image with the donor base and the conservative grassroots donor base, I would say. And most of the time when folks run for president, shortly after there's a book deal.
Right, exactly. But see, I think Ted's problem really is he straddles the fence of a Jeb Bush and a Rand Paul. because he likes to spit the rhetoric of small government, but at the same time he turns around and says we need to bomb these people, or he turns around and endorses the Patriot Act when it comes time to reintroduce that and re-up it when his term is going on.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but he also a lot of folks don't know this, but he was a big proponent of the TARP bailouts.
And his wife, is a big Goldman Sachs executive too, and she yesterday, I guess when he announced yesterday, she didn't resign from her position, but she said she's going to take a leave of absence from her position, which that could be coincidental.
No, probably not coincidental, but
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
it doesn't really matter if she's there in
it didn't matter for
official capacity or not.
Burton, come on now,
the ties are there, and that's all that matters. But yeah, I don't think that if you're supporting Rand Paul or Scott Walker, I don't really think that Cruz is much of a threat. His base is very small. Well, I wouldn't say very small, but it's definitely smaller than probably any other serious potential top tier candidate out there, and it's not likely to grow at all. Simply because he's not a coalition builder. He has no intentions of going out there and building coalitions or taking his message to a larger portion of the party, and bringing other folks inside the party that are not in the party. And I just don't see him as a serious threat to any of the other candidates that are out there. I mean, I think that Ben Carson has a better chance of taking a nominee than Ted Cruz does.
I actually agree with you. I think, to me, what was really it was kind of comical, and it's kind of why I really appreciated Cruz's speech yesterday, is there was more news made about the kids in the audience wearing Rand Paul T-shirts. Whether you like Rand Paul or you don't like Rand Paul, I think it's hilarious that garnered more attention than the actual speech. Is there some kids in the audience supporting Rand Paul? It's like this guy's announcing for president, and Rand Paul's getting as much attention as the actual speech. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, and Paul actually responded to that on Megyn Kelly with Fox News, and obviously the Paul campaign themselves didn't have anything to do with it, and that's sort of the great thing about the Paul campaign is that you have really dedicated individuals, and especially the youth all across the country, that are going to show up to these kinds of events, whether they're called to be there or not. Whereas, any other campaign out there, especially with the youth, I can't think of if I had a single candidate other than Paul in the potential pool of GOP candidates right now that would have any youth just show up to an event like that, without any direction to do so. And, there is literally no doubt in my mind that those kids had zero direction whatsoever and did that just because that's, the kind of excitement that follows the Paul campaign around.
Well, absolutely. And look at, do you think it's the excitement Rand has created, or do you think it's more, not that Rand hasn't done his own thing, but do you think it's more on the coattails, a little bit of Ron? Because, like, you talk about grassroots. I mean, there was a blimp flying over the country for a while with Ron Paul that he had nothing to do with. I mean, grassroots really, that's what his father's campaign was, and people were so excited about liberty, and they were so excited about everybody getting out of their business, and let's go back to the way things should be. Let's stop invading other countries. And, Ron Paul really, had his ideas, and at the same time, there was a mainstream narrative to call him crazy. Do you think, do you think that, a lot of that is going to follow Rand? Do you think that Ron's base is going to distance herself from Rand, and Rand's just going to have to collect it on his own? Or how do you see that?
I think it's a really delicate. It's gonna require some really delicate political maneuvering. I love Ron Paul. I got involved in politics because of Ron Paul, and I've come a long way. And really, I cannot, give credit to anyone other than Ron Paul for sparking my interest in politics. But as I have sort of progressed in my political career, I've realized that there are two kinds of people involved in politics. There are folks who stand outside of the Capitol with protest signs, and they stand there, and they'll stand there all day. And unfortunately, they yell and scream, and their rhetoric becomes so sharp and ineffective that they end up not being effective at all in the legislative process. And then there's, the other folks who are a little bit more pragmatic and understand that you have to play the game to win the game. And I don't think necessarily that the people who, stand outside and protest should be diminished or not appreciated, because they do play a role. Everyone plays a role. It just depends on how involved and responsible you want to be in that role. And I sort of look at Ron Paul as, the guy who kind of stood outside with a microphone and yelled and screamed, as much as he could.
Right. Ron was kind of the guy outside of the courthouse, even though, he had been elected congressman for, ever how many terms.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely got in, but, I don't know that it was ever his intention to truly win, sort of like I don't feel like it's Ted Cruz's intention to actually win as much as it is to raise awareness for, either in Cruz's purpose, I would say political purposes, but for Ron's purpose, more raise awareness on the actual issues. And then you've got Rand Paul, who is sort of the one who I look at as trying to execute on those issues.
I think my perspective is Rand is trying to see his father's mistakes. And I could be wrong about this, but Ron was he wasn't going to back down on any issue whatsoever. This is the way it is. Deal with it. And then you get Rand coming in, and he's, they say kind of selling out on this, and he's back and forth and yada, yada, yada. But when it comes down to the vote, he doesn't really, we go back and forth. But my thought is Rand is just, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. But he's really his father, but he's trying to play the game his father never would play.
Yeah, and I get really annoyed when people try to criticize Rand for playing the game because
Ron got nowhere. Right, you're right. Ron got nowhere not playing the game.
And Ron did get somewhere as far as raising awareness. And like I said, everyone plays a role, and I think that's an important role. But you have to have people who are doing both things, or else, if there's not someone there to execute on the action for the awareness that has been raised, then you're only going 180 when you need to be going 360. And so, I just get really annoyed when people try to criticize Rand for what he's doing, because I feel like those are the same people who have never stepped foot inside of the Capitol or inside of our local Capitol at the state level, and try to actually get a bill passed. I go to the Capitol every single day and work on getting legislation passed, and you have to play the game. If you don't want to play the game, then you just need to shut up and quit protesting outside, because if you're not willing to get your hands dirty inside, then, you can yell and scream all you want, and that's great because you have raised awareness. But these people who are upset with Rand for whatever political maneuvers he has made, I truly feel like those are the same people who, like I said, have never walked inside of a Capitol building in their lives. They don't know what it takes to get legislation passed. They don't understand pragmatism. And like I said, both parties, play an important role, but you have to have both parties, and they work in tandem with one another. But I do think that Ron is unfortunately a political liability for Rand. I've seen a lot of the stuff that Ron's been posting on Facebook and through his various networks, and I still agree 100% with everything that he says. But sometimes, it's all about timing, and there are certain things that, aren't necessarily palatable to a large portion of people simply because they don't understand it yet, and
Right.
until you can educate these people, which takes a very, very long time, you come off as sounding, batshit crazy. And sometimes, I'll see him post some of these things, and I'm just like, oh my God, shut up! You're gonna kill yourself, chances of winning president. But he doesn't even care about that, because
now, what do you
Ron
think
is
about,
wrong, and he's gonna do him.
now, what do you think about this name? Because when I think about, everybody attributes Rand and Ron, Rand and Ron. When I think of Ron Paul and what's existing in the legislation today, the legislator in Congress, I think Justin Amash and Thomas Massey. To me, both of those guys are just like, we don't care. We don't care what you do. Here's two middle fingers up in the air, and this is what we're doing. And Rand is, he's playing the game, but I understand why Rand's playing the game. But Amash, he could care less. He's just,
Yeah, well, I think that Amash has, after losing his appointment on the Budget and Finance Committee, I think that he sort of maybe feels disenfranchised, and Justin is a great guy, and I've spoke with him on numerous occasions, and obviously follow everything that he does. And
I've spoken with Justin. Justin's he's been very nice to me. I can say that personally.
But I think that if I had to look at some people and say who's carrying that torch, it's definitely obviously Justin Amash and Thomas Massey. But I do think that they even themselves are maybe perhaps a little bit more, I don't know that they're more pragmatic or they're more savvy, or it's just that time has come now where it's a little bit more palatable for what they're doing. And so they don't get, as much negative press as being these totally crazy guys, And what it comes down to is the marketing. If you know how to market these arguments and these principles in the correct way, where you sort of take out the emotion of the argument and you stick just to the basic logical principle, which I think both of them are really, really good at. And you don't let other people throw those emotional arguments in there and you get tied up into it and respond to it.
Ironically, look at Amash's campaign. He just ran in Michigan. His opponent threw a bunch of dirty pull at him, and Amash would call into the radio station that the guy was getting interviewed on and go at him. He would get emotional and would just say, "Here's the facts." He would get emotional in his response, but the facts were still the facts. He would still,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he always brought it back around to the logical, factual argument.
He would get in the dirt, but he would never play their game. But he would still get in the dirt with them, which I thought was kind of cool.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think the other difference is that, and this isn't a dig on Ron Paul, it's just a fact, is that Ron has never been a great orator.
I've read all Ron Paul's books. Ron is a horrible speaker, but I like his ideas.
Of course. I mean, he's his books are incredible and his message is incredible, and obviously we would always still show up, by the masses to hear him speak. But when he's put on spot, I mean, he's just not that great, and that's fine. It's a constructive criticism, and it's nothing that he doesn't know. But and I think that's really what the biggest difference is just having the ability to properly rebut that, and I think that's what makes them more effective and more palatable, is that they just they just got a little bit more political talent, but that talent was obviously set up by Ron Paul. So again, I'm not trying to diminish anything that Ron does,
Absolutely.
because no one can do that.
Okay, so before we have to let you go ahead. What are your predictions for 2016? Where do you see this election cycle going?
It's either going to go to Bush. Christie's out of the picture, I think, at this point.
I think pretty shocked. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be pretty shocked if he was able to mount a comeback. If it doesn't go to Bush, I'll say this. I think you'll see a Bush-Walker ticket. Bush as the presidential, obviously, and Walker as VP. If it's not that, then it's going to be a Walker-Paul ticket.
Do you really think Rand would take vice president?
I think he would, because I don't, I'm not a huge Walker fan. I'm not really on that train, obviously, but I think Walker is palatable. I don't think he would be a horrible president. I think that he would do good enough, and Rand would be an incredibly active VP. He's intelligent, he's sharp. He's not Joe Biden, where they have to stuff in a closet and.
Well, most vice presidents are going to be in the background, unless you're Dick Cheney. Basically, all vice presidents have been in the background, unless you're Dick Cheney.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the VP's job is pretty much just be in the background. But we've had some VPs who've been incredibly effective and vocal and have driven policy. And I think you can look at Bush Sr. under Reagan, and as you said, Dick Cheney under Bush Jr. And there's two relatively sort of recent examples of some guys, and as well as Al Gore, who now is being touted as a possible presidential candidate now that all the Hillary scandals come out. So I think that there's obviously precedent there that if all goes well with Walker in 8 years, and if Rand was to take the VP for those 8 years, then he all goes well, and the climate is right. I think that he would be a natural choice 8 years from now to take the presidency. So we'll see what happens, but I will say this, and it's a fact, is that Rand currently has the best campaign staff and the largest established grassroots network of any candidate so far.
He does, and I know that, and I think a lot of that, I think so much is carried over from his father, because people don't understand what grassroots means. Like, Ron Paul's campaign was grassroots. There was, not the $1 billion behind Obama. Like, it was people that just believed in it. And I think that's carried on to Rand.
Yeah, and to make the splash that he was able to make, in spite of all of the powers that were against him, the media and establishment and everything else, and to still have made the splash that he was able to make, and honestly, that splash carried over to Rand, because the second that Romney Romney lost and Obama won, Rand's name was literally one of the first names that popped up, and that was across all platforms. That wasn't just, the grassroots Ron Paul people who just said, oh, Rand Paul, he immediately became, 4 years, 2.5 years now, he immediately became, or 2 years, I'm sorry, he immediately became the name to take on. No, I'm sorry, man, I am losing my mind. 3 years. He literally became, one of the first names that was touted to run for president, and that's only because of the Ron Paul machine that was there, and created so much splash. And so when you take all that into consideration, the fact that obviously Ron was outspent by bounds and bounds and bounds, was still able to make such a splash and be such a disruptive force. Yeah, I mean, that having that force transfer over to Rand, and then the political power and capital that Rand has been able to maneuver and grasp onto over the past couple of years, it makes for a pretty formidable candidate. So we'll see what happens. But I think the ticket's either going to be Walker Bush or Walker Paul, and I don't know where Paul sits on that Walker Paul, whether he's president or VP, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I would, I don't see Bush Paul.
No, I truly do not believe that will ever happen. I tell you what, before we have to let you go, one last quick question, because I think, as I've said numerous times, the Republicans will win the next presidency, whether you like it or not, whether it's Bush and it's just as bad as Obama and all that stuff. The next president will be a Republican. What do you see the Democratic Party like? Do you really think like they're just going to hold on to Hillary? Like, I mean, do you think they have to abandon her at this point and go with maybe an Elizabeth Warren or go with somebody else, or are they just going to just sink with the ship because they know they're going to lose anyway?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's a guarantee that the next president will be a Republican. I think that Hillary, or the recent revelations, have definitely strengthened that argument. But the issue is that Hillary has a lot of baggage in politics. When we run campaigns, sometimes we refer to this idea of people who have grown up in in their actual districts. And, a lot of times that's obviously preferred, but sometimes it works against you, and that's because that person has so much history there, and that history isn't always necessarily a good thing.
In her case, it works against her because, the Democratic Party has really worked against her. And it worked against her in 2008, the powers that be in the money, because I know for a fact that David Geffen, who runs DreamWorks and is a billionaire, watching his just personal documentary, he spoke about the Clintons. He was a huge Clinton supporter in the 90s. And when Don't Ask, Don't Tell came up, and David Geffen is gay, by the way, so when Don't Ask, Don't Tell came up, that really offended him. And he said, I have $1 billion. I will make sure Hillary Clinton never, ever, ever, ever becomes president because they burned me and all my donations. I think the Clintons have made too many enemies of very, very rich people through the years.
They've definitely made a lot of enemies, and the far left hates Clinton, obviously. They definitely want Warren, but the Democratic Party will never let Warren become the nominee, and she doesn't want to be the nominee, I don't think. I think that what you'll see is, I really think Al Gore is going to come back into the scene.
Really?
And
that would be fascinating. You don't think they would run Biden first? Biden's obviously a joke, but Gore?
Well, because, there's so much baggage with the Obama administration. I think Biden, Biden's going to run, but there's just so much baggage with the Obama administration that it just doesn't make him a very appealing candidate, and he's not a very smart guy anyways.
Well,
Gore he's got millions and millions of dollars. He's got a lot of capital. He's got
and he
not only financial capital, but
won the
political
2000
capital.
election. Technically.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and he's, yes, I mean, so not only that, but, he's a VP, and he doesn't have nearly the scandalous, and especially the recent scandalous, sort of air about him that Clinton has. And so, if they can revive Gore, which, shouldn't be that hard,
it really,
he will be.
Yeah, great point.
He will become a much more palatable and safe candidate, I think. Now, obviously, they want the whole gender thing to, play in their favor, so maybe they throw Hillary as VP. I don't know that she's okay with that or that she'll let that happen, but, it may be Hillary and, Hillary as president or as VP to sort of balance things out, but I don't know. I do know that, when you see the liberal media turn on Hillary Clinton,
which they have. They massively have, yeah.
So, we'll see what happens. But, unfortunately, even today, after all of these scandals, she's still polling, pretty well. So
now, how much do you really believe those polls? Like, do you think it's media bias telling you what those polls are, or do you think she's really polling that high?
You can always look at who's running the poll and obviously know, pretty immediately. I mean, if Fox is running the poll, then it's obviously going to show the conservative or the Republican candidate. It's got a little bit of edge. And if it's a poll from MSNBC, then, clearly, it'll lean left. But my idea on polls is that a lot of people and a lot of candidates, you'll always hear them say, oh, well, the polls can say whatever they want to say. We don't listen to the polls. Well, if that was the case, then polling wouldn't be a multi-million-dollar industry. So,
Dang, you said it. And that's the thing about politics in general, and I think that goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning with Cruz. I don't think Cruz really is trying to be president. People feed into the industry for money. And I do believe Ron Paul was an exception personally, and I may be wrong. I think he genuinely just tried to get his message out.
Right.
But
yeah, and back to the polling thing, I think the biggest thing that people need to realize about the polls is the margin of error. I think that people don't obviously they don't. The vast majority of people don't understand the science behind polling to begin with. But that margin of error is really important to pay attention to. And if it's I've never really seen too many polls out there with fewer than 3 points margin of error. But a lot of these polls have 6, 7 points margin of error, and those margins are very loose. And so, sure, Hillary may be up 6 points, and if the margin is 7 points, then the other candidate can definitely be winning in those polls. So that's where the trust issue comes in the polls, but it's not to say that they don't have, some validity, because they do.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Michael, thank you so much for calling in tonight.
Well, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well, it was an absolute pleasure to have somebody with your intelligence and your intellect call in. And, I'm an idiot. We all know that. So,
gosh, you wouldn't be running the show if you were an idiot.
Well, that's the world we live in, Michael. But thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Okay. See you guys.
All right. Wow. Huge.
Very much so.
Yeah, I mean, he brought the fire and the funk. Like, that's the detail of what's going on. This guy's in the beats. Like, he knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. Like, we sit here and we talk about it. That guy's in there, and he's telling you what's happening. So, to our wonderfully astute producer, Shannon Madden, what do you think about what Mr. Lotfi just said?
Well, I mean, we need that work.
Well, I tell you what. Before we we hit your point, let's hit up
Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell. Area code 870. What's your name and where are you calling from tonight?
My name is Christopher Parker. I'm calling from Paragould, Arkansas.
Fantastic. What would you like to talk about? All right. No, Christopher got dropped off. If he calls back in, maybe we can pick him back up. All right, Shannon. So tell me what you thought about old Mike's call there. I mean, great interview.
Absolutely. It just kind of goes to underscore, how rigged this thing is from the jump. And if you heard every single thing that he said, that the whole system is rigged from the jump. We're talking about our election system, who's elected to be elected,
And the thing about Michael, and I'm not speaking for him at all.
And again, this is the first time I've talked with Michael.
I've known him for a while. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm definitely not speaking for him whatsoever. And I have the utmost respect for him. I think, like he said in our conversation, I think there's people that you have different ways of going about things, and for Michael, the way of going about things is getting inside of the system and trying to change it from within. I know that he is somebody that has the utmost respect for liberty and the utmost respect for what we all believe in. And he wants to continue that. And some of us see that as somebody trying to infiltrate the system. You see, well, that's just hypothetical, like we spoke about tonight, Amash and Massey, and say Ron and Rand and whoever you want to name. If you like them, you don't, it doesn't matter. Let's just say you got 10 people out of 535 people in Congress. Like, you're infiltrating the system, but you really don't have that many people involved.
Absolutely.
And I think the argument can be made both ways. I think what he said tonight was very valid. And I also stand on the side of, the people protesting outside the fence. What's really important, I think, is who has the loudest voice. I think that is the most important thing, because even Nixon said it in his tapes, because, Nixon recorded everything in the Oval Office, is Nixon came across as very screw the hippies, screw these people, screw these people, screw these people, I don't care about them. But Nixon, if you go back and listen to his tapes, he actually was kind of scared of the crowd in front of the White House. You would never, ever, ever, ever would have thought that about Nixon. But he was. And I think it goes to show the power of the people. I think we did it 2 years ago against Syria. I think we helped pull us out of a war with Syria that John Kerry was just screaming and ranting and raving over. I think that really, the people still matter. I think it's the voices of the people that still matter. And these politicians are like Ted Cruz. He's trying to sway this vote or sway that vote. And he thinks that he's going to sway the Christian vote because, first off, he's at Liberty University. That's Jerry Falwell's university. It's a very Christian university. I personally...
Because when I think of the word Christian, I immediately my mind jumps to Jerry Falwell.
Well, But the thing that's so ironic is, he the beginning of it economically, Cruz sounded great, and then he turns into, I support Israel. Now, I'm not supporting Israel, but you're supposed to be running for the President of the United States, not the President of Israel. That, to me, is an issue, but that's okay.
Israel is a very important
it is.
The United States
government. Listen. Israel has had their issues, and they have their weapons, and they have their bombs, but we have to stop making Israel a political point. That has to end now.
Or excusing Israel for a lot of the ills that they contribute to the region over there.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have Cruz saying, well, ISIS is doing this, so we have to go bomb, 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 bomb. Now, we've bombed over and over and over and over and over and over. What does that solve? What does that fix? Have we had any resolutions to those
Absolutely
things?
not.
Absolutely not. Area code 405. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hey, how you doing? What's your name and where you calling from?
Colton, I'm calling from Oklahoma.
Fantastic. What would you like to talk about?
Hey, I just wanted to do my little input on the guy that just spoke about the protesters. I just feel that the protesters are like the start of the entire movement. You know, that's what fuels the politicians and the congressmen and the senators to actually get up and do something. And let's be completely honest, not everybody's smart enough to be in Congress. So we have to have something for everybody to do. And I feel protest is the basis and the starting point of that.
I'm so glad you called in and said that, because I do agree with you. And I know him, and I think that he kind of didn't speak as well as he should have. But no, I completely agree with you. I think the protesters outside are as important or more important than the people inside the building. They are the ones dictating the policy.
Yeah. And without, the people backing the entire plays, like, let's go back to Vietnam. Without the war, protests of the war, nothing would have ever been done. They would have continuously done whatever they saw fit.
You nailed it. You nailed it on the head. So, and I think we've seen it periodically. But the problem is how do you collectivize a group of people to become, wrapped up emotionally in these points of view? Like how do you get them in there? How do you make these people think how do you make these people think that, okay, this is where you have to go to? Like, you have to draw them into this moment.
Yeah, well, it all starts with, the person. Like, well, here in Oklahoma, we have a protest on Thursday. And I wouldn't have found out about that unless I went looking for that information. I went looking for activists. It's on each person specifically to do something to fight for your country, to get involved in the freedoms of your country.
Absolutely. And I think you're 1,000% right. The people have to get involved. They have to. The louder...
That's where it all starts.
Right. It absolutely is. And the louder the people are, the more response they're going to get. Because you know what? If you have 5 people in front of the White House for whatever agenda it may be, you're going to get a laugh. But if you have 5,000 or 50,000 or 500,000, it could be the exact same agenda. You're going to get a completely different response every time.
Yeah, because you completely brought the attention that this is the people, this is the power of the country. The real power of the country is the people, and what they say is what goes.
Yeah.
So when the people actually will speak for themselves instead of letting these corrupt men rule their lives, action gets done.
Absolutely. So go ahead and tell us real quick what y'all are protesting about and what y'all are protesting against, and tell us your mission statement out there in Oklahoma.
On Thursday, we're gathering in front of the Capitol to protest the forced adoption of children and the children going hungry inside of our own country, inside of our own state. Simply $30 billion can cure world hunger, but we spend over $700 billion on defense. People need to realize that Americans and people here at home are starving and are unable to provide for themselves. And all of us have the ability to do something about that. We all have the ability to help our countrymen that are in need. And that's what this is.
Absolutely. So everybody out in that region, are you going to be in Oklahoma City? What city are you going to be in?
It's going to be in Oklahoma City, right at the foot of the Capitol.
Okay.
1 o'clock on Thursday.
On Thursday, Oklahoma City. Please, everybody, go out to that event. Thank you so much for calling in and telling us about that. That's fantastic.
It's amazing to me that, the word protester in this day and age, in 2015, United States of America, is usually associated with the term dissent.
Right.
Dissenter.
But a protester is not a dissenter.
And here we have a protest going on about hunger. about
Right.
children going hungry. And you know, and there still will be some counter protesters or some other, but why are those people out there? Why are they doing that? They're clogging up my traffic. They're getting in my way. They're clogging up the sidewalk. They have all their little signs. What do they hope to accomplish by this?
What they hope to accomplish is the will of the people.
Feeding some people.
Right.
I mean, you just, I mean, that's so humbling just to even hear, you know, a collective of people doing that in this day and age. And you know, we protest about some very complicated things. And let me tell you something right now. Everyone protesting right now has a right to protest, regardless of what you're protesting against. And you know, unless you're the Westboro Baptist Church, of course.
Even those idiots. Even those idiots.
But they're entitled.
They are entitled. I don't agree.
They're the Larry Flint of the protester scene. I mean, you know, if you want to get down to it.
You know, don't agree with it, but it's America.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem people have. They think, well, we live in America, so you should have the right until I disagree with you. You know what? That's not true. It's the people you disagree with that should have the right. And that's what freedom is. If everything in this country was everybody agreed on the same thing, then you wouldn't need freedom. We'd all agree with everybody. And we wouldn't need these laws. We need people like the insanity of Westboro Baptist Church and all these crazy things. That's what creates freedom. As soon as you start saying, this person's not allowed to say this, or this person's not allowed to say this, or this and this and this, you're cutting freedoms off. You are. No, are they? No, do you agree with it? I'm not saying you agree with it. I'm not saying you don't agree with it. I don't care. You believe what you believe. If you want to believe with them, go do it. If you don't, then don't. It's got nothing to do with me. But what I'm saying is in a free society, they should have the right to express their insane beliefs.
Absolutely.
Because that's what freedom is. Expressing insane beliefs.
Well, you know, I guess this would probably be a good springboard to talk again about what PM Beers is going through right now.
Well, they had the mistrial. AJ, you know. Freedom.
That's a tough one right there. And again, that right there is what happens when protesting goes wrong, even though she did absolutely nothing wrong.
No.
A wonderful piece on Anti-Media right now about that, and you know, we can't stress it enough. Free PM Beers.
Well, she's out now. They had the mistrial yesterday.
I know, but we're still in a court system and free PM Beers because she's still facing a real sentence and a strike on her permanent.
I tell you what really aggravated me. Yesterday, Nick hit me up and Patty. I talked to Patty for just a second online, but Nick really told me the story, and everybody was so happy that it was like, oh, you had a mistrial. And everybody was happy about that. And like, I actually wasn't. I wasn't.
I totally agree with you.
And I'm going to tell you why I wasn't happy about that.
Because she wasn't exonerated.
Right. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we had a mistrial over this? Like, who is not...
An open and shut case of not guilty.
Right.
Not guilty.
Right.
Not
it's
guilty.
Like, wait, why did this happen again? Like, why was there a mistrial? Like, what was there to have a mistrial about? Like, what are we hung about? The hung jury. Like, really? One person held out? Like, are you kidding me? This is America? Like, a person's filming for their own right? The First Amendment? Like, you all believe in America and this person's filming and we have to have this whole debate about it? Like, are you serious? Like, well, that really bothers me.
And the internal memorandum as far as the, you know, what type of journalist she was.
Well, the judge.
Who she was associated with. That right there simply infuriated me, regardless of my own affiliation with Anti-Media. You know, it just to say, because we aren't, and I'm still trying to figure out what the criteria is for a real journalist versus a pretender.
Well, the judge.
What, we need to be in a college program and working for the college paper to be,
That's how America works, buddy. Listen, unless you have $30,000 worth of debt, then you don't have that job.
Yeah.
You don't. And as soon as you escape the system, look at Bill Gates. He escaped the system. Now, he made billions with a B, billions of dollars. So what did the government do? We're going to go ahead and come in there and take half of that for you. Thanks so much for that monopoly. But look at Comcast. Do they do that with them? Do they do it with these other companies? Nah, they're not monopolies. They're not worried about that. They're worried about one man that didn't have a little college degree. And so we're just going to go ahead. You just go ahead and give us that $40 billion. Thanks. Thanks for that.
We're leaving you $40 billion, so just be grateful.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll come back and get some.
And so here's my question. What has been accomplished with that extra money that the federal government took away from Bill Gates? And I'm not really a big fan of Bill Gates. I actually kind of think.
Well, we solved a lot of hunger in this country with that, didn't we?
I'm going to go ahead and assume there's somebody going hungry tonight.
Probably so. I'm kind of hungry myself.
Well,
but how much money did we spend on all these numerous wars that we've been involved in for the past 20 years? And we're just talking about for the past 20 years. We won't go anything before that.
Those wars were needed. Have you not paid attention to anything we talked about tonight? This is what we talked about. There are brown people with some things on their heads, and they have a Quran, and we have a Bible, and we disagree with that, so they should die. That's what we discussed. Are you kidding? That's what freedom is. Freedom is saying, I hate everyone, and will kill everyone. That's freedom. Freedom is, and again, a Christian nation, that's what Jesus taught. I remember it. I read it in the Bible. Kill. That's what Jesus taught. He didn't say love one another. Yeah. That's what you thought you heard in Bible school. He said, just kill everybody. Yeah. That's what Jesus taught. Jesus taught you to kill everyone.
That didn't sound right. Was that in your Bible?
No, that was in the Fox News Bible.
Oh, okay, yeah. Megan Kelly's Bible.
Right.
Her little hot ass.
So wait, if Jesus didn't teach you to kill, and then wait, his own disciples stabbed the guy, cut his ear off, and said, no, don't do that. Like he had that forgiveness, right? But you know better. You know better. So that's okay. Keep killing. Ted Cruz, please send those troops overseas, Ted Cruz, because you're a good Christian man. Please, good Christian man, send more men to die. Please send more men to kill people, because that's the Christian way. Kill Christianity. That's what you believe in. You're all idiots.
I mean, the Christianity symbol is a cross, and that was a symbol of execution and torture from the Roman Empire. So, okay. I'm starting. It's all starting to make sense now. Yeah. And Jerry Falwell's a great guy too. He's picked a great place to start off. His, presidential run. I don't know. What are the odds? Have we looked on the Vegas odds for Ted Cruz actually making it past the first round of the primary?
Kentucky has a better chance of going undefeated this year.
Our guest speaker tonight really, drove the point home almost immediately that, Ted Cruz is a decent guy, don't get me wrong, but Ted Cruz has no real honest-to-God platform. There's a lot of talking points. Kind of sounds like the guy who's currently president right now, if you want to get down to it.
Well, I tell you what. Thank you, Mike Velati. Absolutely fantastic guest. Ladies and gentlemen, Anti-Media Radio. Join us tomorrow night. Shannon Madden.
Peace out.
Anti-Media.
I'ma let 'em know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.